after getting a lot of positive feedback, I think everybody is enjoying here. I want all of you to please let us know your feedback. We are working on electronic feedback also, and that will connect with you. It's very important that we know doing right, what we are not doing right, and what we want to do the next year. Because we very firmly believe that this is not our event. This is not the event of NASSCOM. This is not the event of any group or bunch of individuals. This is the event of a community, and the community is game developers. It's our event, it's your event, and we have to make this event more meaningful for all of us, the kind of time, energy, effort, money that we are spending. As Rajesh in his welcome speech had mentioned, the inflection point. And now that all of us are getting this feeling that we have reached that inflection point, I think let's capitalize on that and let's take it to a next level. So once again, I'm so very happy and thankful to all of you for your very energetic and enthusiastic participation. As we are getting into one more keynote, this is so very, very important for all of us to listen to the pioneers, the visionaries, the best of the mentors that are available today for the gaming sector. I would want to introduce our speaker, and therefore I request Rajesh to please come up on the stage and do the honors. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for Rajesh Rao.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. I hope you're having a good time. Can I see some hands to say that you're feeling cool, cool? Almost everybody. All right. That lot there, are you happy? All right, cool. So we're rolling into our second half of the second day. It's our and we have our keynote, the second keynote for today, by a man who is considered among the legend category in the gaming industry. Ian Livingstone is one of the pioneers of the UK gaming industry, and he is now immortal because he created Lara Croft, and we all love Lara Croft. And Ian is now the life president of EIDOS, which is a part of Square Enix. And Ian's also playing a very active role in growing in helping the UK gaming industry transition from a largely console development and console ecosystem to an ecosystem that is embracing all the new forms of gaming and the like the social and the mobile, and he's been investing in a number of small companies, and so keeping himself firmly looking at the future. And today we have him sharing his vision of what the next generation of video games is going to be like. So Ian, welcome, and we again, as we have this tradition in India of honoring our elders, and you are an inspiration to all of us and an elder. No, there is no such thing. And so this is a traditional Indian welcome, and with a sandalwood garment for you. Thank you. Silk scarf. And I have been corrected. I think I described this as a peta yesterday, and I have a few people tweeting saying this is not a peta and this is a Puneri pagadi. So I hope I got it right this time. Yes. And we have a small memento, which is a statue of Lord Ganesha. He's a god in India who is prayed to remove all obstacles in the way.
Okay.
And again, I said something about him. He's considered a cool god, and so I think it's a good gift to give. So
That's brilliant.
welcome, and we look forward to your keynote.
Okay, thank you. With or without the hat, you think I should give this speech? With it? Okay. It's a little small for my big head. But I will keep all this on. I like the smell. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here in Pune. It's my third trip to India, and I always really enjoy being here. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see the Indian games industry growing at a fast pace to take advantage of the growing market that is everywhere in the world. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about the history of games, where actually video games came from, where they are today, and where they might be going to in the future. And a little bit about myself, how I got into games. I've been in the industry 35 years. This is me back in 1975. I launched a game called Dungeons and Dragons in the UK with a school friend of mine called Steve Jackson. And one important thing about Dungeons and Dragons that taught me the fact that it was the very first role-playing game and had a huge influence on all games, not just board games and role-playing games, but also computer games. You know, what would World of Warcraft have been without the invention of Dungeons and Dragons? Not the game that it is today. But also a lesson I like to talk about is about the value of creating original intellectual property, how you determine your own destiny by having your own IP. And Dungeons and Dragons wasn't actually ours. When we started Games Workshop, we were a licensee a licensor of the game. And then when we lost that license because Games Workshop was being requested to merge with TSR, who owned Dungeons and Dragons, we said no, but we had to replace D&D with our own property. And anyway, just moving on, I'll just talk about, this is the very first Games Workshop store. This is the opening day in 1978. We were very delighted to see so many people interested in the kind of games that we were trying to make at that time. And this is how the Games Workshop models are today. So, you know, extraordinary advances, over 300 stores now. Games are promoted through White Dwarf magazine, and of course Warhammer is the most famous intellectual property game at Workshop. And the reason Warhammer came about was, as I said earlier, Dungeons and Dragons was not ours. We had to replace it. And from that day and to today at EIDOS, I've always been interested in original intellectual property, something that belongs to us, the company. You don't have to take a license. As long as it's popular, you will benefit from it going forward. So many companies in the computer space are work-for-hire companies acting as a service to other people. I think you can control your own destiny if you create your own IP, market it, leverage it, license it, and you can then build real value in your own companies with your own properties. And to build your own content, especially in the digital world, allows you to be hugely successful on a global basis. So these are just some early lessons from all. So say Games Workshop today, huge company, publicly quoted in the UK. I sold out of the company in 1991. Fantastic brands, some great properties. So many Games Workshop titles are now licensed to video games companies, and obviously Warhammer 40k is a successful video games franchise as well. But the value really goes back to Workshop, who owns the IP. From Games Workshop, multiplayer game, Stephen, to attract a wide mass market with playing. I suppose you could say this was a casual game based on a franchise which is D&D. And we came the very first game books, a system we call Fantasy. These would look like, oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. Hooray! Hooray for Fighting Fantasy. So Fighting Fantasy is branching narrative, quite an influence on today, make sure. In one way I'm sad it's the 30th anniversary next year, but in another way I'm very pleased because I'm actually writing a new Fighting Fantasy game book to celebrate the 30th anniversary next year. So from branching narrative books, this is the Warlock if I Type Man license. I got into video games in 1984. I was the designer of Domark, a small British developer, publisher. their first game, Eureka, I designed. And Domark over time grew, and I actually joined the company in 1992 as an executive, and Domark metamorphosed into EIDOS with the addition of 3 other companies to make a NewCo, which we called EIDOS. And of course, Tomb Raider was the most successful title of EIDOS. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Tomb Raider later on. Just to say then, EIDOS was recently acquired 2 years ago by Square Enix, who are now our parents, and everybody knows, of course, some of the great Square Enix brands, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest. And so Square Enix is a sort of global developer, global publisher. They didn't acquire EIDOS to take our IP and move it to Tokyo to develop. Absolutely the opposite. They saw the value of our content, the value of our ability to make great games, and they wanted content for a Western market developed by Western developers. So also the third branch to Square Enix is Taito, who owns Space Invaders. So in this today's highly competitive console market in particular, Square Enix is very well placed with its funding and its ability to create global content. So let's look at where video games came from, because to know where we're going, we need to know where we've come from. And you can really put it down to Steve Russell in 1961 created a game called Space War, which was 2 spaceships battling it out in deep space with limited fuel, limited ammunition. But that was never commercialized. That was just a laboratory simulation. And it really wasn't until Pong in 1972 that games became commercial. Now, there's a few things to be learned from Pong. One, the game is all about gameplay. When people say to me, what are the 3 most important things in a video game? I always say gameplay, gameplay, gameplay. Technology, of course, is important. Graphics is absolutely important, but they both support the gameplay. You'd always play a game that played well but looked bad over a game that looks great but plays badly. We are selling an interactive entertainment experience. If you're not selling graphics, if you want just purely graphics, you can go watch a film. People are here to buy your mechanic and enjoy the interactivity and the pleasure from playing your game. Now, another thing that Nolan Bushnell said when I spoke to him a couple of years back, he was saying that games at that time were very easy to get into, rather like casual games today, in that for Pong you need to know 6 words and you can start playing. Avoid missing ball for high score, and you were playing. And it had the addictive replay value. You wanted to play it over and over again. So in many ways, when games moved on from these simple casual style games and became hardcore console games, the games industry, I think, lost its way in some respects, in that the developers wanted to impress their friends rather than looking at the market. So those people, the 40% of the population were playing games during the early days of the video games in the American homes, because everybody were socially inclusive. You could learn very easily to play, you could play bite-sized chunks. And yet when the developers, the hardcore developers, got hold of games, they made it harder and harder and harder as they tried to impress their friends. And they also introduced quite a lot of violent content into it, so we lost the female audience. And so you end up, instead of 40% of the population playing games, it was narrowed down to 10%. Now this 10% had a $1,000 a year habit, so that could support the industry for a long time. But it was only then, but games became kind of niche, and became a dark art played in bedrooms, and the rest of the population didn't understand what people were doing because they were difficult and they were complex and they were concerned around sports and around combat. A year habit, so that could support the industry for a long time. But it was only then, but games became kind of niche and became a dark art played in bedrooms, and the rest of the population didn't understand what people were doing because they were difficult and they were complex and they were concerned around sports and around combat.